Hi, this is the Folksy Friend, and today we are going to be talking about Tolkien. In particular, we're going to be talking of his story of creation, how his world was formed. To set the stage for this story, we begin in a void, where the only being that exists is the One. He also is called Eru, or Iluvatar, and I will be referring to him as Iluvatar throughout this video for the sake of consistency. So Iluvatar exists in this void, in a place of comfort that he has created for himself, but he is the only living thing that exists. He has what is known as the imperishable flame that can be used to bring life into existence. And there comes a time where he decides to use the imperishable flame to create other beings. And he creates the Ainur. The Ainur are spirits, essentially, that exist with him in the comfortable part of the void. Iluvatar begins to share with them themes of music that come from his own thought. And in time, they start to sing based on what he has taught them. But the problem is, they only understand a very limited part of what is possible in the universe because they each come from a very distinct part of Iluvatar's mind. So at first, they can't sing together and they can't achieve harmony. We really don't know how long it takes for them to learn enough about one another that they can understand things outside of themselves and they can start to harmonize. As soon as that happens, Iluvatar comes to them and he shares a new theme of music. And he tells them that now that they're able to sing together, they're going to sing this music that he has described to them. So they do. They start to sing. They sound like a beautiful choir of instruments and voices all mixed up together. And it goes really well, and Iluvatar watches, and he is happy. Up until the point where one of the Ainur decides that he is not content to be in the chorus, and he wants a solo. So now we meet Melkor. Melkor is an Ainur, just like the rest of them, created from the imperishable flame and part of Iluvatar's mind. The thing about Melkor is he goes hunting in the void for the imperishable flame because he has this inescapable desire to create things of his own. He's not happy to just hang out and wait for Iluvatar to share more information or to teach him more things or even to create more things. No, Melkor has to create those things himself. He thinks that Iluvatar is not aware that he's hunting around in the void and looking for the flame and being kind of disobedient. But Iluvatar is aware, and it's going to cause some problems. So once the family choir is in the full swing of their beautiful classic opera, Melkor decides that he is going to add his own little spice to the mix. So he plugs in his metaphorical electric guitar and just starts belting out his own entirely different song. A lot of the Ainur that are near him freak out and they stop singing, but there are some in the crowd that hear this music and decide, oh, I like that better than what Dad has going on. I want to join in that. So some of the Ainur turn their music to the heavy metal, and it gets louder and louder until you have this great big mess of heavy metal mixed with opera that clashes and just sounds awful. So Iluvatar steps in. With his left hand, he adds his music to this mix. Let's call it a jazz tune. And the jazz instantly clashes with Melkor's heavy metal so badly that most of the Ainur immediately stop. And so really you have Iluvatar with his jazz, you have Melkor with his heavy metal, and just a couple of Ainur whispering some opera, trying to keep it going, and it is just terrible. When it becomes clear that Melkor is not going to stop or change his mind, Iluvatar stands. And as I'm sure many of us know, if we're having a family squabble and Dad stands up, it's going to be a problem. With his right hand, Iluvatar adds another stream of music into this whole mess. Let's say techno. So he has jazz coming from one hand, He has techno coming from the other. Melkor is still riffing hard on his electric guitar, and there are still some little Ainur desperately trying to keep the opera going. And it gets so loud and crazy and chaotic. The walls of their home start to shake, and it reaches a point that it is so loud that everything just stops. And there is silence. And in that silence, Iluvatar looks at Melkor and puts him in his place. Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melkor. But that he may know, Melkor shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. Basically, kids, you may think that you're trying to strike out with your own original ideas, but everything you've ever thought of, it comes from me. And there is nothing you can do to change my plan that I have not allowed you to do. Most of the Ainur are understandably very scared and upset that this has happened, but the one person who should be the most embarrassed is in fact secretly furious that he has been degraded like this. Then, as if there hadn't just been a very intense family squabble, Iluvatar walks out of his shiny mansion part of the void and out into true emptiness. And the Ainur all follow him out. Once they're all out there in just the black, empty nothingness of the void, he shows them a vision. What they hadn't realized was while they were singing their opera, all of it, the opera, the techno, the jazz, the heavy metal, all together, they had been weaving into existence a blueprint for an entire world. Now Iluvatar let them see what they had been singing about. Essentially, the way Tolkien describes it, if one of them was meant to encapsulate the beauty of the mountains, then his singing would have added in the mountains to the world. If another one's singing was supposed to be the sound of birds' wings, then her music would be adding in the birds. Everything that they sang was part of a plan, a kind of 3D model of the world. And now he was letting them really look at what they had done and understand that their magic, their power, was able to create this. And they were just amazed. They thought it was the most beautiful and incredible thing. And a lot of them wanted to be part of this world. And the one who was most excited, I think it will come as a surprise to no one, was Melkor. Because not only did Iluvatar show them the beauty of this world in its natural form, he also showed to them his plan for a part of the history. He explained that he wanted elves to be created, that they would be the most beautiful, powerful creatures of this world, besides any of the Ainur themselves. And that after the elves would come humans, and that essentially what the Ainur were going to do was create this world for the elves and humans to live in. And when Melkor saw the elves and the humans, his immediate thought was, oh goody, something I can be lord and master of. I want to rule over those creatures the same way Iluvatar rules over the Ainur. It's got some daddy issues. But he was really the only one that thought like this. The other Ainur who were really invested in this world just wanted to go and help it. They didn't have this kind of selfish desire. Melkor was really alone in that. So they continued to watch this beautiful world and its history right up until the point where elves started to fade in power and the men really took over as the leaders of the world. And in that moment, the vision disappeared. They were not able to see the ending of the world and what happened after the humans became the leaders. And they were pretty upset about this. They were shocked and dismayed. They wanted to see how everything was supposed to play out and their role in it all. But Iluvatar said that they had seen enough, and now it was time to put it into action. He told them that he was going to create this world, and any of them that felt the desire to could go into the world, become bound to it, and help form it from within. The world would be in the void, but it would also be closed off in its own little bubble. They wouldn't be able to come and go freely. If they made the decision to go into the world, they would be essentially cut off from Iluvatar. And for this reason, not all of them decided to go. Some of them really wanted to stay at home. But the ones that did decide to go became known as the Valar. So in this void, suddenly there is a bright light. And the Ainur realize that Iluvatar has created the world. He has put the imperishable flame in the center and put it out into the void. Those who have decided to enter go into the world and become the Valar. But they're immediately pretty surprised because the world looks nothing like what they saw in their vision. It's like Iluvatar took a IKEA box of materials and just dumped it out on the floor. And now they have to use their memory of the blueprint and try to put all the pieces together to form the little world that will become the home of the children of Iluvatar, the home of the elves and the humans. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, in ages uncounted and forgotten, until, in the deeps of time, and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea, there came to be that hour and that place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. They had formed the basic parts of the world. Everything was kind of put together. They just had to do some cosmetic changes, like make mountains and rivers and valleys, anything like that they wanted to do. As soon as he saw the beauty of this world and what it was going to be in person, Melkor tried to take over. He told the Valar he was going to be king and that this world was going to be his. But before he could really assert any kind of dominance, Manwë stepped up. Manwë was equal to Melkor in power. They were the most powerful of the two Valar, and Manwë had been closest to Iluvatar. He really spoke for Iluvatar. And he told Melkor that it was not just him that created this place. It was a group effort. It was led mostly by Manwë, Olmo, and Alwë, and that Melkor had really only just altered things to his liking and for his benefit. He had no right to claim this world as his own, and all the other Valar agreed. So then Melkor, outnumbered, kind of slunk off to a different part of the world to sulk. And with that little squabble out of the way, the Valar decided that they would take on a physical form. Up until this point, they have been spirits, but now they want to walk upon the land. And they think about their vision, what Iluvatar showed them of the elves and the humans. So they choose to create bodies that look a lot like elves. These are forms that they can use or slip out of whenever they want. But once they have created these physical forms and set foot on the world, Melkor saw this, and he became immediately jealous of how beautiful and happy and frolicky his siblings were. And as he looked on them, his envy grew then the greater within him, and he also took visible form. But because his mood and malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. In this terrible form, he went back to the Valar and waged war. Like I said, they still had to do some cosmetic changes to finalize the world. And with really the spirit of a toddler throwing a tantrum, knocking over Lego towers, he tried everything he could to stop the world from being finished. They raised up a mountain, he knocked it over. They dug out a valley, he raised up the land. But despite his best efforts, in time, they did finalize the land. It didn't look like the Valar thought it would, maybe not have been as pretty as they imagined, but it was a fully formed and functional world, and everything settled and solidified, and it was finally finished. And that is the story of how Tolkien's world came into existence. My next video will go over what happens next in the timeline. I hope you enjoyed my little metaphor. It is an interesting read, the Silmarillion, trying to piece together what on earth Tolkien is talking about throughout the first part with the music and the themes of song. It's a lot, so I hope I made it a little easier to understand. I hope you'll join me for the next part of the saga of Middle-earth. I'm the folksy friend, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.